A lot of people confuse compromise with sacrifice, and I don't think it's that. The more I think about it as I go. Okay. So, objectively speaking, compromise is about general flexibility in leadership. It falls underneath accountable masculinity rule number 3, decentralized leadership, knowing when to lead and when to follow. Are you receptive and coachable? Being able to articulate healthy compromise through action is the metric of showing your work and your genuine intent. Is your work done in good spirit? Is it done as a chore? Is it done in a way where you're just here so you don't get fined? Sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes you got to be able to just go in a place, shut your mouth, play the game, and get out of it what you need to get out of it so you can move on to the next thing. That's all it is. So are you receptive and coachable? Somebody might have to tell you, hey, bro, slow down, be quiet. This ain't the time. Read the room. If you're not receptive and coachable, somebody's not going to be able to protect you. Not that you can't hold your own, but sometimes you got to be directed back into the play. You might be getting out of bounds. Once you're out of bounds, you're out of the play. So being able to articulate healthy compromise through action is the metric of showing your work and your genuine intent. So let me just put this up on the screen so you guys can see it with me. How about that? Because this is gonna come out later on some slides, probably. Yeah. Let me just open up another window. How about that? Got all these tools up here. No sense in me just reading it, so you don't get a chance to see it. Opening up a Word document so I can share the screen. Yeah, man. So I want people to be able to see what I'm looking at. So we had the same picture at the same time. I hope y'all like my little lo-fi music. I hope it's not too loud on the playback. Okay, here we go. I'm about to show y'all the screen right here. We're going to read this together. All right. So I just threw this up on a Word document real quick out of Google on Docs. Ain't even titled it yet, but I will. Matter of fact, let me do that now. You never know how fast you start typing. And then you will be naming a bunch of documents, or have to go back and name a bunch of documents that you didn't label the first time. Okay, so check this out. Objectively speaking, compromise is about general flexibility in leadership. It falls underneath accountable masculinity rule number 3. Decentralized leadership, knowing when to lead and when to follow. Are you receptive and coachable? Being able to articulate healthy compromise through action is the metric of showing your work and genuine intent. This is when we find out if you're doing it for a self-serving reason or not. Your genuine intent, like for example, it's like the people that record folks that that are homeless when they're giving them something. What was the point in doing it? Do we need to show it? To some degree, we probably do. On the other side, did the person do it with a self-serving intent? Probably did. But all things are true. So both things exist. That's why you got to make sure your intent is genuine. You have to compromise for both unhealthy and healthy outcomes. The type of choice you make determines the nature of the compromise. Is your compromise self-serving? Is your compromise a burden to others? So tonight, as far as this thought goes, this is about choice. The highlighted blue piece. You can compromise for a winning outcome, or you can compromise for a losing outcome. And when I say the choice you make determines the nature of the compromise, it's like, where were you when you made the compromise? What was the goal? What was the intent? You know, if you had something that was self-serving, it's going to be easy to see. And sometimes if your compromise is self-serving, you also have to wonder, is that compromise self-serving enough to become a burden to others? Like, do you have something that is so non-negotiable that if you stuck by, or you got in a pride ego contest, would it put you as a burden to other people? Like if you did something to jeopardize your household, the quality of life of it, and now the roles are reversed and someone has to carry you, did your decision burden the people that trusted you? That's something to think about when you start talking about compromise. Okay. This is one of the main points of why I wrote this, because the conversation was centered around what's sacrifice and what's compromise. And I say don't confuse the two. I say sacrifice is when you have an easy option and choose the hard right decision for the desired outcome. Compromise is the act of negotiating equity in a planned outcome. The difference is based on what you're doing it for. Is it to be a people pleaser or a team player? Again, the decentralized leadership concept of accountable masculinity rule number 3. So sacrifice is when you have an easy option and choose the hard right decision for the desired outcome. Meaning, like, if you want to get in shape, it's not going to happen until you change what you eat, whatever your habits are, and actually doing some physical training to make that a reality. The hard right decision is not sleeping in if you have a schedule, not being late, failure to be consistent. You got to be consistent in whatever it is that you want to do. If you want the desired outcome, there's a degree of consistency that corresponds with the outcome that you're looking for. Compromise is the act of negotiating equity in a planned outcome. You bring your resources to the table, I bring mine. This is my goal. Your goal is somewhat parallel or in sync with mine. Let's figure out what we can do. If it requires me to compromise in some area where you're more efficient than I am, then that's so be it. That's just what it is. If it's money, credit, or something to that effect, we got to go where the strength is. That's an example of compromise. The difference is based on what you're doing it for. Is it to be a people pleaser or a team player? If you're doing something to be a people pleaser, you probably got a self-serving reason associated with that. Team player, self-explanatory, willing to make the sacrifice that it takes for the team to win. Being able to think objectively about where you fit in the big picture is the mindset of a team player. A people pleaser is a singular, selfish-driven mindset. Not saying that it's unnecessary or frowned upon, because some things require you to be self-driven and nobody can come and save you. Like, for instance, if you play tennis and it's singles, it just means what it is. It's just singles. Like, it's all on you and how you respond to it. Nobody can come out there and return a serve better than you can in that moment in time, because that's why you are in the arena. The person that's in the arena, they're in the arena for a reason that's higher than themselves, because that's going to negate whether or not it's going to determine whether they're doing it for a people-pleasing reason or is it for the betterment of the team. Let me keep reading. You have to compromise your present comfort for uncertainty of understanding your undetermined future growth. If you don't make the blueprint, don't expect a structure to appear. You got to give up something. There's something that you're comfortable with right now that feels so certain, but it's probably the very thing that you have to give up to get the thing that you actually want. And typically, it's time and comfort. It involves one of the two, and sometimes both. If you don't make the blueprint, don't expect the structure to appear. How many of y'all bought something at IKEA or someplace where you bought furniture that came in a box and you had to assemble it? Imagine if you just had the pieces without the instruction, and then imagine if you just had the instruction without the pieces. You could probably figure one of them out and get some kind of use out of it, but it probably won't be exact. And that's probably like trying to assemble the pieces without the instructions. That's a different experience, and it takes a different type of, engineer mindset, I guess, or will to just fix something. But if you got just the instructions, you have, and no resource, you still have just instructions. That's it. So if you don't make a blueprint for what you're trying to accomplish, then you're going to always repeat yourself instead of just making progress. Because if you have a blueprint, there should be measurable progress. There should be metrics, because you have instructions. You have a vantage point. You're not going in blind. You just have to trust the process. But if you don't build a blueprint, if you don't have a blueprint, you don't have a process that's trustworthy. And lastly, we are not a monolithic people. We have different ways to solve the same problem with different logic. Compromise is part of establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries in life. You can't please everybody. That's the true sacrifice. So, that's my interpretation of what a responsible man weighs the cost of when it comes down to compromise, sacrifice, taking care of other people, thinking objectively, being willing to solve problems, have thick skin, and understand that there is a purpose greater than his own. And the only way he would know that is if he was on his purpose. Because when you have a purpose, you live life on purpose. So you have to get up every day intentionally prepared to deal with things that might get you off schedule. And things that might get you off schedule put you in situations where you may have to compromise. It's inevitable, especially moving forward, because you're trying to get access to a different quality of life, access to a different type of success, and access to a different pool of resources. You have to trade something to gain access. And that is one of the overall points when it comes down to compromise and sacrifice. Are your compromises aligned with your overall goal?